Good afternoon. I'm Lawrence Sanford, Senior Analyst with the American Security Council Foundation. Our mission is to educate Americans on issues of national security, economic security, and moral leadership. Today, I have with me, as usual, Joy Vatrabek, who is the Director of Operations for the American Security Council Foundation. And we're going to discuss China's gray zone tactics. And in particular, today, we're going to talk about the laser incident in the Philippines in the South China Sea. Welcome, Joy.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry, for having me back on these SOS briefs. And I would like to get your brief on the laser beam that the Chinese apparently pointed at the Philippines.
Well, China has been engaged in a total war against the Western and Americas for many, many years. It's part of their 100-year plan to be the number one in the world. And part of their strategy is gray zone. It's below actual shooting in a war, but it is above action. The actions are above normal diplomatic channels. And the perfect example of gray zone tactics is what just happened within the last week in the Philippines, namely that in the South China Sea, which China claims to be theirs, territorial integrity, along a 9-dash line, which basically encompasses the entire South China Sea. And China's claim is that it stands historically, and that any neighboring countries that border the South China Sea, such as the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, their economic development zones are meaningless if it contradicts the China's 9-dash line. So we have the Spratly Islands, which are approximately 100 miles from the Philippines, but 700 miles from China, being claimed by China as part of their territory. The Philippines claims it's their territory because it's only 100 miles away and therefore within their 200-mile economic zone. And the Philippines have stationed troops aboard a former U.S. ship that was decommissioned, sold to the Philippines, and they ran the ship aground in one of the Spratly Islands and manned it back in 1999 with troops. And since then, they've been replenishing it with supplies and so forth. But the Chinese have become much more aggressive, as we know. Mm-hmm. And now last week, they blocked the resupply ship. And as the resupply ship from the Philippines was approaching the Spratly Islands, they fired laser beams at the ship and temporarily blinded some of the Filipino sailors. And furthermore, as the ship continued towards the Spratly Island, the Chinese ships, along with Chinese fishing vessels, which are basically an arm of the Chinese Navy.
Right, yes.
And by the way, the Chinese ship that was aggressive is a Coast Guard ship. So technically, it's not a military ship, but for all practical purposes, it has military capabilities.
Again, another gray zone activity there.
Precisely.
Let's just keep calling them out as it is.
Yeah, they just keep on pushing and pushing. And eventually the Filipinos had to go to another spot because they were maneuvering in such a way as to endanger the Filipino ship, and they were outnumbered. And so I guess they resupply it by air. But so it's just another example of, just another example.
We believe the laser beam is meant to bully them away from the economic zone.
Right. It's intimidation, and who knows what the Chinese are doing as far as laser beams. They fired laser beams at American planes and ships in the South China Sea, and they fired laser beams from a satellite down in Hawaii a week or two ago. So who knows what that's all about?
Yeah, I just read that article as well.
Yeah, and then we have, of course, the classic balloon incident is another gray zone tactic where they just testing and testing and testing. So we live in interesting times.
We do. And I like these little SOS briefs of yours, and I like your articles, Larry. Keep them coming. And let's keep calling the Chinese out on their gray zone tactics.
Thank you very much, Joy.
Thank you. And to our listeners, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube and Rumble channels at ASCF US. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you next time.